People Are Everything, the show that's a bit like Desert Island Discs, but rather than bring music, I ask my guests to bring the 5 people who have shaped the person they are today. And today we are joined by Lucy Chamberlain. Lucy is a business leader. She's a podcaster herself. She's a public speaker. And first and foremost, an advocate for women developing long, sustainable and successful careers. And we've met each other through a third party. I didn't know her very well going into this conversation, but I feel I know her very well post this. So for anyone listening who already knows Lucy, you will really enjoy this conversation. And for anyone who hasn't met Lucy before, she's an absolutely amazing guest. And I think you're going to like her and like the things that we cover. So without further ado, I bring you Lucy Chamberlain. Hello, Lucy. Welcome to People Are Everything. It's an absolute joy to have you here. And I'm already intimidated because you're also one of those people who puts books behind them and makes me feel incredibly thinly read. So I really am thinking I need to work on this because you're one of several guests now who've got the book thing all worked out and I haven't. But Lo, it's so lovely to have you here. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. I mean, we were introduced by a colleague of mine who knew of you. And that's unusual so far with this podcast series because most people have somehow a link to me where I've either met them along the way or have some kind of connection. But you're the first person that's come to me who has been known of. So well done for being known of, because that's an achievement in itself, isn't it? So my colleague introduced me to you and said, you really need to speak to Lucy. And she's a proper fangirl. She just thinks you're amazing. And she follows all your podcasts and your speaker series, and generally just thinks what you do is incredible. And I've had I do a bit of research, Lucy. And from what I can see, the work you're doing is extraordinary, and particularly your principles with it. So I'm excited to hear who's made you, if you like, today, because I think from what I see, you speak a lot into the world about I don't know, the things you believe and the things that you want to see happen. So I'm just curious to see who's instilled all of that into you. So, but before we do that, why don't you share a little short summary, or as long as you like, Lucy, because I probably will take a while to explain who you are and what you do.
So I think I probably can be most easily defined by the 3 different hats that I wear. So my most corporate hat is that I have spent the last 27 years having the incredible privilege of placing exceptional talent into amazing opportunities in London's leading finance and professional services firms. And I've built an all-female team since establishing my own business 10 years ago, 24 incredible women, many of which I've worked with for goodness, almost that decade. And so that's one of my hats. My second hat is really using my platform that's built up over the last 27 years of that experience and using my passion for communication to help unlock potential in others' capability to connect better with themselves and with others. And so I speak and coach and train and run workshops, and it's definitely something that lights me up and brings out a whole other side of who I am. And then my third hat is all around advocacy and allyship and creating a more equal world of work for women where they can succeed and thrive and not just survive. And that involves all sorts of pro bono training of women that may have had gaps in their career. It involves being involved in lots of female pipeline projects and supporting various educational institutions to help create a platform at an earlier stage where women can advocate for for their needs, speak up and share boundaries, and understand that it's not, they are not in any way broken or lacking in capability. It's more the systemic structures that we need to challenge and how to do that. So those are the three different hats I wear, and I guess bringing those together is who I am professionally and personally, I think, too.
I mean, I love all of that. I mean, that is such people talk about purpose, don't they? What's your purpose? And you've taken
Mm,
something where you've clearly got a very, a rich understanding of and expertise in, but you've really lasered in on the thing that you want to achieve and leave in your mark, if you like, on the the women that you are helping, but also in changing the landscape of employment generally.
mm,
The promotion of female talent as being something that's hugely valuable to an organization, as well as to the women themselves who, for whatever, some, I've noticed that some of the people that you represent are coming back into the workplace, and
mhm,
that may have been because they've been caregivers, or there may have been some other circumstance, or parenthood, or whatever it might be, but there's reasons why they're coming back in, and which can be very intimidating, and it can be quite you lose a lot of confidence if you haven't worked for a while, all those things. And the bit that drew my attention more than anything was your investment in other people with your academy work. That's rare. I don't see that very often with in your field, where you're actually saying, okay, I'm going to create opportunities and we can work together on placing you, but I'm also going to help you develop your skills so that you can flourish. So I was super impressed when I saw that.
that's really kind of you to say. Thank you so much.
Oh no, you're very welcome. So listen, you know the format. I've done a few of these now, and I've shared a few with you. Um, my next question, I'm genuinely very intrigued by, because I think everyone has a different experience of preparing for this conversation. But how did you find choosing your five? Was it horrific, or was it easy, or I almost can't imagine you having the time to do it, to be honest. So I'm curious about when. When did you do it, Lucy? How did you fit
Well,
it in?
I think, for me, it was mainly in the shower this morning, because I think the best way to approach conversations like this are from the heart and from what feels
Absolutely.
instinctively true to you at a particular time. And so I decided that I was going to approach it by the five different chapters of my life, and
Okay.
pick out somebody that was most influential in those five different chapters of my life, and people that perhaps made the biggest shifts for me in terms of helping me to lean into my own sense of potential and capability. And I think that that was the approach for me that felt most natural and non-performative. And yeah, in that way, then I sort of took the pressure off, because it started to feel like a lot of pressure. And who should I include, and who should I mention? And oh my goodness, if I don't mention so and so, will that
Yeah.
like I've a, that they're not important to me. And so removing that and just thinking about different chapters of my life and the challenges I faced in those chapters and who helped me create the biggest shifts
Yeah.
felt
Oh, I like that.
easiest.
That's a great approach, because you're right. It can feel like trying to put a wedding list together when you've only got
Mm,
you can only have five guests, isn't it?
yes, so true.
When you know hundreds of people, and I imagine you'd know so many people that you could include. So I think that's a really good way of structuring it without really causing any kind of uh, I think offence is too strong a word, but excluding anybody that you feel would expect to be on your list, because
Mm.
that's a very specific way of doing it, and I like that very much. Okay, well, all right. So who's number one then?
So I from chapter one, which was growing up in Somerset in a primary school, where I definitely didn't fit in. I didn't fit in lots of different ways. I was incredibly tall. I still am, obviously, but I was particularly tall, and so I stuck out no matter whether I'd wanted to or not. I was going to stick out. Um, that was the first way that I felt different. I also didn't fit in terms of my interests. I was very, very geeky. I absolutely loved reading from a very early age and loved learning. And in the school I was in, those weren't celebrated characteristics. And I had a pretty tough time by a group of girls who were determined to make sure that I felt, I think, yeah, that I fitted out and didn't fit in. And it was
Hmm.
really tough to navigate. I found myself buying into those belief systems that, thoughts are just beliefs are just thoughts that we think over and over again. And I found myself believing that I was lacking, that I was unattractive, that I think, probably that sense of unlovable. Um, I felt that quite strongly. And
Hmm.
the person, I think, that had they not been in my life at that time, my outcome may have been different, was a teacher called Miss Daddy. What a brilliant name.
Miss
And
Daddy.
Miss Daddy. And I always remember her. Well, firstly, she never wore a bra, but also she was as a lingering memory. She didn't wear a bra. She was very attractive, didn't wear a bra. So as you can imagine, she was pretty popular. But
Oh
ignoring that
my.
bit, she was incredibly aware. And I think she
Hmm.
absolutely knew what was going on and the impact it was having for me, and had noticed that I was shrinking. Not physically, but
Hmm.
definitely in terms of my ability to own my space, to share my thoughts. And she was incredibly kind.
Hmm.
But more than that, she saw that shrinkage and really pushed me to expand and to move into areas which were going to take courage. So things like encouraging me to, to try out for the school play, to sing in the choir, to read in front of class, to go for opportunities that I simply wouldn't have gone for had I continued to buy into the messaging I was being given, which was to be quiet, to go away, to not take up space, um,
Hmm.
and to feel deeply unworthy. And she showed me the capability that one person has to shift your perception of who you are in the world by believing in you, but mostly by
Hmm.
practicing deep empathy, but not reinforcing the victimhood. So she was
Yeah. Yeah.
very, very good at asking the questions that helped me to create that sense of my capability to help myself, rather than poor you and this is terrible, and which would have ultimately kept me stuck in that belief system. So I think she had an extraordinary impact on my ability to show who I am and to be vulnerable. And I certainly think she is the person that set off the chain for me believing that I could and had a message to speak on stage and could help others unlock potential.
Well, okay. First of all, yes. What a great name for a teacher.
Yes,
Um,
so cool.
But you know what? I can picture. We have an archetype about teachers anyway, don't we? And teachers
Mm,
are either much loved or much loathed, and kids are pretty good at finding a thing to pick on. And everybody's teacher had a nickname, or as I say, you can either love them or give them a hard time. And so I imagine with a name like that and the confidence to turn up to a class of 30 people braless, she was
mm,
probably made of pretty strong stuff herself, which why she probably looked at you and saw something similar. She saw this is someone who has an awful lot going for her, but let's not let societal structures and the kind of typical schoolyard stuff bring her down. Let's find a way to allow her to flourish. So I think extraordinarily good luck on your side that you found someone who could see that and also has the capacity to bring that out of you.
yeah,
Because you might well have noticed it, but if she didn't have the capacity to help you and inspire you and lift you, it would have just been great. I've noticed Lucy's, wilting a little bit. Okay, that's not good. But she
mm,
actually could. She had the capability to do that, so that's amazing. Um, Yeah, and I suppose the other the other thing that came to mind when you were talking is, isn't it interesting that even though your early memory of all female groups was not great, you have forged, if you like, a pathway to primarily support women. Excuse me, primarily support women
Mm,
in their workplaces, and one of the things that we both probably share is that experience of witnessing women not advocating for each other,
yeah.
not supporting each other in the boardroom or the meeting room. And I honestly believe that that's one of the biggest obligations if you have a platform, if you're a female in any kind of authority within a business, that you look to encourage more advocacy and more allyship amongst women,
Mm,
because there's so much talk about how can we help men change their behaviors inside the workplace for acknowledging and supporting women within it. But there's just as much work to be done um, in women understanding that it's just as hurtful, it's just as damaging, it's just as limiting when women don't support each other in the workplace. So I just found that interesting that that was your early kind of school experience, and maybe that fueled you into this direction as
mm.
well. What do you think? Do you think I'm onto something
I
there
think,
or not?
yeah, I that's an insight I haven't had before in terms of that contrast between my experience of early, yeah, of my early experience of groups of women, and latterly now how I have a team of women. I work predominantly women. I place predominantly women. I train predominantly women. Um,
Yeah.
I have never really reflected on why that might be, but perhaps I really deeply understand that women with shared values that collaborate with other women genuinely have the capacity for such extraordinary achievement, but also great change in the world. And we need
Mm.
men and women. We need, we need we need allyship together. But I think women supporting other women, there is something incredible because we are about collaboration over competition. When you bring women together, you see that all the time in female networking groups. There's something extraordinary that happens. Magic, I guess, is created, I think, between women.
Well, we're kind of the vanguards, Lucy, and I'm older than you, so I'm on the. I've been standing on the shoulders of the women before me, and I was very fortunate to have some very great role models as I was growing up in my work life. And but I do still feel that we're at the kind of pinnacle of it still, and there's so much more to do.
Mm,
But I think women allyship and advocacy is probably is going to get. I suppose, better in society as society starts to have more opportunity for women, so that we don't have to scrap over the scraps. We don't have to, that scarcity thing of, there isn't a lot here, so we need to be super competitive and not trust each other. And I think as opportunities start to grow generally, I think women will be a bit more open to, like you say, a collaborative um, uh, approach to progressing, I suppose, and succeeding. Because I think
yeah.
that's where the problems lie. I think there's still that scarcity mentality of there's probably only one woman board seat. Let's all fight to get there.
Mm,
That's I'm using that literally and figuratively, but it's
mm.
like I think the more opportunity there comes, then the more we'll probably not not scrap so much. But anyway,
I
I'm
hear
glad
you.
I gave you that pause for thought. Okay, good. Well, I love the sound of Miss Daddy. And is she still in your life? Do you know if she's
No,
still
no,
live and kicking?
I should reach out to her and say thank you. But no, no, she's not in my life anymore. Um, no, I haven't seen her for many,
Okay,
many
well,
years.
try
But she lives on in spirit in
in
terms of,
you.
yeah, absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
wonderful. Well, if you do manage to find her, you can send her this now, can't you?
Yes.
Good. All right. So phase one or chapter one,
Yeah.
I like that. Who's chapter two then? Who's in chapter two?
Okay. So in chapter two, so moving from primary school, and then into my teenage years. And I have grouped a group of people into one, and I hope that's allowed. I don't know what the rules are, but my second is the
Yes,
Johnson
it is.
women.
It is fine.
So my second is the Johnson women. My mum is one of five, and they are from Yorkshire, and her mother and all Johnson women were very strong, outspoken, driven individuals. None of which were shy at sharing how they think, how they see the world, challenging the status quo, and I would describe. I think in my we aren't as a family super close. We don't spend lots of time together, but what I absolutely became aware of latterly, and for me, was that bit around I never, ever, ever had any limitations around what I thought was possible for me. And
Hmm.
we didn't come from an affluent background. So certainly I didn't go to, I wasn't privately educated, all those sorts of things that sometimes help instill and your sense of sort of the sky is the limit. But I didn't have any sense of limitation, and that has directly come from the Johnson women, all of which had different professions. My mum that was told she could either be a typist or I can't remember the other thing she was told, but she's a psychotherapist. To Pam, that was a physiotherapist. Those the voices, and I think for men to be around them at the time, I certainly know that my brother said this 3 times, bloody intimidating. But it absolutely helped me to move to London straight after university with no money. It helped me to make choices and seek out opportunities in my life because I didn't have those limiting beliefs around what my potential looked like.
Hmm. Well, again, what an extraordinary bit of luck, Lucy,
Mm,
because all in one encompassing group, you probably had all the good stuff instilled in you across, and each one of them would be uniquely different. But to kind of, girls typically are raised to, you know, not necessarily shoot for the stars. Let's put it that way.
mm,
We
mm,
we tend to be raised with fairly modest expectations of what we can achieve, even with the most well-meaning of parents and influencers. I had a similar experience, but for a different reason. So I was pretty boundaryless when I was growing up, but for a reason of sort of non-parents or
yeah,
non-influences. I was very self-raised. So I don't remember ever thinking I couldn't do something because
mm,
I hadn't had that conditioning. I hadn't had that imprinted on me that I couldn't achieve things. So I totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm from a different starting point. But it's
mm,
so wonderful a gift because it says, like you said, I'm just going to go do this. I don't need to wait for permission. I don't need to ask anybody's, you know, approval for it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
yeah.
So I think that's absolutely brilliant, and I can imagine them being quite a force altogether, especially
Yes,
five plus
yes.
one, because you'll be there too.
Lots of
So,
lots
I'm
of
glad they.
wine, lots of smoking, lots of and lots of powerful, intelligent, incredible opinions. Yeah.
But isn't that wonderful? I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing this too is I love long form conversation. I love it. Like literally, of my week, this is one of the highlights, as well as getting together with great friends, having a subject or two, not just little snippets, but really getting into something where people can freely share their opinions and freely share their experiences. And
Mm,
I just believe in it, and I just worry sometimes. I know everyone's talking about the sort of TikTok generation, and are they going to have a more of a 30-second attention span to
yeah.
anything? But getting into things, I really hope it doesn't become a dying art form because you learn so much from that experience.
So
It sounds like you
true.
had it in spades.
Yeah. I think so, and I think that piece around curiosity was definitely something that the Johnson women instilled in me, and the
Mm,
challenging the status quo.
yeah. But do you remember specific themes from that? Do you remember, were there specific threads? And please excuse me, my power lead has just fallen out of
So,
my computer here, which is really unhelpful. So 1 minute.
okie
Sorry,
dokie.
listeners. We can edit this out.
Yeah, it's all right.
Here it is. Oh, we probably won't. I've decided I'm not going to worry about
I've
things
got
like
it.
that. I'm
Who
just going to
cares?
keep going.
Keep it.
Doesn't
Look, it's
matter, does
real
it? Right,
life. It's real life.
it's real life. I'm
Themes.
powered up now.
I think the big themes of those conversations, the big threads were there was a lot of talk around politics, there was a lot of talk around justice, fairness, um,
Mm,
there
mm,
was a lot of talk around women's roles and
hmm
all of the BS that we're fed around what that should look like, and what approval should, what approval we are told to seek, and actually what approval we might seek in order to have a different outcome. So I think my biggest thread was challenging what is, and
yeah.
not being afraid to share a different perspective. Um, and it could be intense at times. I hated all the debating. At times I just wanted to run away from that because it would feel like a constant sparring over opinions. And sometimes even now, if I'm around a group that's really getting into a heated debate, I can still feel that sort of sense of wanting to retreat at times.
Mm.
So it was like all things; it wasn't all good, but it certainly helped shaped the outspoken person that I am today. That is for sure.
But you know what? Even that, even being able to stay in the room when people are sharing opinions that may not be yours,
Mm,
and sort of just holding ground and not, doing the fight or flight thing. I'm sure there was a little bit of fighting, but
yeah.
to be able to stay in the room and see a healthy debate and
Mm,
experience that and know that you don't have to agree with everybody, but you can stay in the room and continue learning from that. Again, I just hope that's not a dying art. I love conversations with my son, for example. I'm saying that with a slight caveat because he tends to come alive about midnight, and
mm,
I've been up since 6, and it's not the right time for me. But he loves long form conversation as well, and he wants to get into things like how the universe was formed at
mm.
midnight. Why do we have to talk about that at midnight? But you know what I mean? Is that but he's grown up around that kind of thing too, where it's you just get into things, and
Mm.
I think that's extremely healthy. So well done, the Johnson women on so many levels.
Yes.
Um, hooray for them! All right, listen, let's go to
Okay,
who's
number
in chapter
three.
3.
Okay, so chapter three comes after. So it's interesting because what I've just shared from the first two big influences or people that shaped who I am, you might be thinking, or possibly be thinking, that okay, so this is somebody who completely believed in themselves, had absolutely no sense of limitations, felt that the sky was the limit, could say what she wanted. Well, there's duality in lots of parts of my life. So certainly in terms of in my career and in my work. I I had this incredible drive and determination. A lot of that back in
Mm,
my 20s was driven by fear. I think fear of not having enough, yeah, there was a fear of not being enough. And I think that sense of not enoughness led me to marry. So I had a couple of big tea trauma stuff go on in my teens, and led me to marry somebody who completely reinforced that belief system
mm,
that on a personal level, who I wasn't enough. And
mm,
a decade later, with a 15-month-old, I left that marriage, and because I could not possibly have stayed in it any longer, and I would have had to given up all of who I was to remain there.
mm,
And so leaving that, and financially, I was left in a very difficult position. Lots and lots and lots of challenges, logistically, financially, personally. spiritually, emotionally, on every single level, I was in crisis, and I was using really maladaptive coping mechanisms to get through that time. And I also decided to leave the partnership I was in, a business partnership, um, and move and start my own business. It's an interesting. I look back now and think it was a mixture of madness and sanity all at the same time, because I knew
Hmm.
nothing was going to change if I didn't change something. And so making this shift was my vote for a new and different future, even though I was sort of stuck in this soup. And starting a business opened up a brand new inner critic, an inner critic that was so domineering that and I kind of thought I was making this big brave step. I was doing loads of learning. I was reading all the self-help you could possibly get your hands on. But actually, I think I met somebody at just the right time, and that's who this chapter
Hmm.
3 is. And her name was is Anique, Anique Petru, and Anique was a speaker coach. So I went to see her because I was getting to the point where I couldn't even introduce myself in a room full of
Hmm.
founders. I had absolutely lost all sense of um, all sense of self-worth, essentially. But no one would have known, because I had also become the master of wearing masks. And
Hmm.
meeting her was like this sort of unraveling and rebuilding experience. So she, we had a couple of sessions together, and I think in the third one, she just asked me to look into her eyes for a minute and say nothing.
Oof.
And it was like she could see into my soul,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
suddenly like I had this ultimate vulnerability of all the masks I'd been wearing, all of the protective shields I placed around myself so that nobody could see what was really going on for me. It felt like she shattered them in that minute.
Hmm.
And Anique had this incredible heart and incredible capability to be direct at the same. She always said it's because she's German, but she had this. Whether that is or isn't the case, I have no idea. But she had this incredible duality to who she was.
Hmm.
And what happened for me as a result of that third session for with her was that I started to rebuild my connection back to who I really am. Because when we finished that exercise, she just said, "Lucy, I don't think you know who you are."
Hmm.
And so having that coaching experience with Anique was, I will be forever deeply, deeply grateful to her, because she set me on a new path and opened up this kind of, I don't know, this whole new world to me, which is a world of where you can find alignment, where you can feel deep self trust. And had that if I hadn't, I don't know how it would have been, or what would have been my outcome if I hadn't have had those sessions with her, because I suddenly started to drop all of the maladaptive coping mechanisms that I was using
Hmm.
to cope with how I was feeling. And um, she was just, and is, the most extraordinary woman. Yeah, you should look her up on. She's just incredible. Yeah.
I will. She does
Mm,
sound amazing, and that kind of connection through just forcing someone to stare back to your into your eyes. I can just imagine that is so disarming. Like you say,
mm,
it all just falls away. And I wonder if I don't know if it's obviously you just touched on the first relationship and how devastating that was, but I wonder if there was a necessity to that for you, that you had to uh, almost kind of reach a rock bottom of who you thought you were and how
mm,
you were presenting to the world, um, in order for Anique to reach you in the first place. Because I think sometimes people can go along their whole lives being kind of okay. So
mm,
it's kind of you find these coping mechanisms, but they're not really who you are. They're not really taking all those layers off. They're just, you're getting by with it. And sometimes, that person, hard as it would have been, kind of needed to take you to that level where Anik could really do the work with you and get you to actually, I imagine now, obviously we're all a work in progress, but it sounds to me like she she enabled you to really look at who you were, and who you are now, and give you the confidence to. And again, I can only imagine, and I'm projecting a little bit because this is how I feel. I feel I can walk into any space. I can walk into any environment, any situation, any conversation, and I know I'm going to be all right because
Mm.
I fundamentally know who I am, and I fundamentally know that I'm a good person whose intentions are good, and you know like me, don't like me, it's kind of okay either way. So does that resonate with you? Is that something you've ever thought about, that actually was a necessary part of your personal development?
I think I felt I think I felt a lot of anger for a long time. I
Mm,
think I placed for quite a while about things that had happened. I think I placed a lot of blame. I blamed my parents for a while. I certainly blamed my ex-husband, and I hadn't, and I don't, I don't believe that. That I don't believe that toxic sort of everything is a gift story is
mm,
necessarily helpful. I don't think it was
mm,
a gift, and I don't think it should have. I don't think that experience should have happened. But what I do absolutely know is that if it hadn't have happened, I wouldn't have the empathy I have for other women,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
absolutely wouldn't have the understanding. When people say, "Well, how could you stay with that person?" or why didn't you do anything about it, or just be more confident? I understand what bullshit all of that stuff is, because um,
mm,
if you have an internal belief system that is not on
yes,
your own side, it takes loads of work to unravel and
yeah,
unpick, and also it's not your fault.
absolutely,
It is our responsibility, but I just didn't have that agency, and I didn't have anybody around me at that time that, I mean, probably a lot of it, what was going on in my personal life, I kept to
private.
myself. Yeah,
Mm,
'cause I was
mm,
ashamed.
yeah, yeah,
And that is one of the things that, that incredible, when I first watched that incredible Brené Brown talk about what is shame,
hmm,
and I felt like light bulbs going off, that
yeah,
shame is we are bad. And that belief system is it needs somebody to come into your life, I think, or you need to hit rock bottom and seek out that person to help shift it. So yes and no. No, I don't believe
yeah,
it was meant to happen, because I don't think that that's how life works. I think life just lives. But
yeah,
I do think that if I hadn't have had that experience, I wouldn't be the person, and I certainly wouldn't connect with others the way that I do.
yeah. No, I'm glad we've separated those two things and clarified, because that was my point, was that you needed to be open to receiving
Yes,
that sort of wisdom, which you may not have done if you'd not had those experiences.
that's very true.
Um, and again, we haven't known each other only as long as this podcast, but I'm sensing already that there is some comparisons there, because I grew up in in a terrible situation, and I kept my shame in, for all of that, intact for years, and you know masked the hell out of it. And it wasn't until I wrote a memoir actually, and
Mm.
about it all, and put it in the world, and it's like night and day. That, pre-book, you would have found me, you know like you say, you can pretend quite well in the world
Oh
for a
yeah.
long time. But post my memoir and post my own kind of personal revelations, it's like it's a completely different feeling. I'm a real advocate for this. I'm a real advocate for learning yourself and really being comfortable with who you are, and knowing that. like I say, whatever comes your way, you're going to be fine. It might
Mm.
be shit. It was
Mm.
shit. Your ex sounds like put you through hell, and to attack someone's self-worth. There's a phrase at the moment, what happened to him to make
Mm.
him need to
Of
do that to
course,
you?
of
I,
course.
I'm just like, wow. If that's what got you through the day, ex person, what on earth? Because you took down this glorious woman who brought you, I imagine, nothing but joy. So to do that is extraordinary. But for you to recover from that and to go on to flourish, now that's character. That's real. Mm, the stuff of the Johnsons. That
Yeah,
is
that's
so
very
so well done. It's the stuff of the Johnsons. So the combination of those two groups of people, I think, is amazing. So, well, I'm very glad that Anique was in your life, and I will look her up. Actually, I'll get the spelling from you later.
true.
Okay, so we're now in chapter 4. We've refound our
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yes.
So what came next?
Oh, I mean, it couldn't not have been my daughter. It couldn't. It just
Okay.
could not have been. I just wouldn't be. I think she has profoundly shaped who I am, my experience of the world, my life, and I am so grateful for our connection, our relationship, and I have learnt so much from her, and how she is in
Hmm.
the world. And we are different. Obviously, we're different, but we are quite different. And she has a calmness and a courage and a quieter confidence. She wasn't. I was desperately seeking validation at her age, and Chloe does not approach the world like that at all. And to meet her, she's nearly 6'2". She's mixed race. She has this incredible presence, but this kindness and this gentleness and a softness that is just a really lovely, calming energy to be around, and a wisdom. There's these sort of insights and a noticing and an experience of seeing the world in a way that is optimistic, I think,
Hmm.
and I am surprised by her optimism, because I think personally, and I think most of us, feel really concerned about
Hmm.
this world we are now living in, and technology and all that sort of stuff. So she has brought to my life a softness, a gentleness, and a purpose that I can't imagine my world without.
And I'm sensing a kind of. I mean, again, I may have this wrong, but your description brought to mind this idea of protection, like
Mm,
because here's someone who really sees you, who knows you more than
mm,
anyone, I would imagine, and
yeah.
has this presence, like you say, and this kindness and this ability to kind of, this with this wisdom beyond her years. When you were speaking, it came across like, oh, that's my dog. That's not helpful. You came across as someone that you feel is on this planet for you a little
Mm,
bit, and you feel kind of protected by.
yeah.
Is that does that ring true
Yeah.
with you at all? Or
I think I felt, I mean, obviously for lots of us, I'm nearly 50. I have experienced the corporate world where you absolutely had to be tough, really tough, to navigate, and to be successful, and to not just survive. You really there was a toughness that was required. I think I grew up in a family where toughness was required, and I think the softness that she's brought to my life has, yeah, it opened up a different way of being for me. Even even through all of the self discovery and everything else, I think, and I don't imagine that without her being who she is, it's not just about being a mother. It's not just about that. It's who she is that brings out that softness in me, because she's not combative, but she's also
Mm,
very boundaried, and
mm.
and very clear. And there's an assertiveness around who she is and what she's willing to accept and not accept that I have deep respect for.
I guess that's kind of where I was going with this. Is like, I mean, I'm always in awe of people who can set boundaries. I'm getting much better at it, but I was always a little bit exposed in the world, shall we say?
Mm,
And and again, I don't know if I'm just projecting here, but my new partner is tall. She's
mm.
5'11", and I remember when I first met her, I kept telling everybody that she's 5'11". She's 5'11", and I was like really kind of excited by her presence, if you like. She has that sort
Mm,
of strength as well, and I'm somebody who's really a giving sort. I give you my time, I will give you my love, I will give you my the shirt off my back type. And she came along, and she has all those qualities, but she's super kind, super generous, but she will hold a boundary, and she's very protective of me. So
mm,
I had, just while you were describing Chloe, I was like, oh, I can picture that. And you know what? When you have someone like that in your life, you do get softer, you get kinder, because like you said about duality earlier, yes, I'm ready to serve, as it were. I'm
mm,
always looking, but there's probably days where I really do need to protect myself, and the reverse of that can be quite a shock to the system, to the other extreme.
mm,
Whereas I feel like I've got a kindness in me, and openness in me, and readiness in me every day now, because I feel protected by Catherine. I feel like I can't go far wrong, because
mm,
Catherine will be there, and to fall back on, or to step forward. So that's what I meant. It's like the way you describe her as somebody who's just got you. She's just
mm.
has your back. She's for you. She's in your corner,
Yeah,
and that will allow you to be more. We talked about Brené Brown, to be more vulnerable, and which is the ultimate strength.
yeah,
The reason that first talk she did blew everyone's mind was no one had talked about strength being
yeah.
in vulnerability
Power of
before. It's always the other way
vulnerability, that's
around.
the title, right? Is that the title? The Power of
Well,
Vulnerability? Is
she,
that the
well,
talk?
there's so many now. She's done, so she definitely talks about shame. That's one of her
Yeah.
big ones. But vulnerability was the one that launched her. And we were raised to not show our weaknesses.
Mm,
Don't do that. Gosh, we'll
mm,
get picked off.
mm,
But you know what? There's so much strength in it. I get told I'm transparent all the time, and people say, "Oh, you need to protect yourself more. You're so transparent," and I'm like, I think that's just an acceptable word for vulnerability. I
mm,
I I am transparent because I feel incredibly
mm.
strong in myself, and I feel well
Yeah.
protected. And so I'm transparent, and I'm vulnerable because I've got the strength to do that. So I love that she's in your life. I think, I don't know. I'd like to. I think we all need a Chloe. Let's all have this.
Yeah.
I hope she. I bet she's got great friendships. I bet she's much loved by lots of good people.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad she's your daughter. Well done. Okay, so that's Chloe, and as I say, absolutely. Um, I don't know. She sounds like a gift to you, Lucy, and I'm really pleased that you have such an incredible relationship. So, okay, now for the finale then.
Oh,
Who
I
is
think
number
it's so
chapter
hard,
five?
isn't it? This was a really hard one. But I thought about sort of, and this was the bit when I was in the shower this morning, thinking, okay, 5 people, and then also, of course, there's part of you, if you're going on a podcast or you're doing a talk, or you want to, there's still that part of me that wants to impress or to bring a, but in the end, again, going back to that authenticity piece, is I thought the last person I'm going to talk about is my second husband, David, and the reason is that I genuinely thought being in love was a euphemism, absolute BS, and didn't actually exist. And I remember after I'd been in a relationship with him, I don't know, 5, 6 months in, thinking, oh, this is what love feels like. This is what being in love feels like. And it came from a place where this person showed up with consistency, was incredibly kind, would always cheerlead me, would encourage me to, be very much myself, to explore new challenges, um, lots of laughter, and that sense of him being so open and true, and there never being a moment, and we've been together now for nearly 12 years, and genuinely to this day he has never given me cause for doubt over who he is or his commitment to us as a couple. And
Mm.
I think, and I came into the relationship with all sorts of stuff, baggage
Yeah.
and belief systems around relationships, and a genuine belief that he would cheat, because and it
Mm.
took me a long time to unravel that one, and constantly testing that. And in the face of constant testing, he was unwavering in how he showed up. And I think he really helped me to realize that is that people can be genuinely really good, and genuinely really dependable, and strong and supportive, um, and I think I feel incredibly lucky to have, in my 50 years, in the latter part of those, to experience what love really is in a relationship,
Mm.
and to
Mm.
have had um, that sense of somebody's absolute loyalty, no
Yeah.
matter what, and
Yeah.
that rock from which you can build from. I had never had that before, and having experienced that now, that foundation, it has been, transformational in terms of what feels not necessarily possible in terms of potential, but what feels like this lovely sense of safety that I definitely had never experienced in my life
Mm.
before meeting him.
Oh, well, sounds like you've got two great people holding you very, very um, safely, like you say, and protected. I'm curious about this next question. Then, so you say about um, coming into a relationship where it's you completely trust it, and it's
Mm,
um, he's proven himself time and time again. Did it take a while for you to get there? And what kind of things were you? Did you do that kind of? Because you hear a lot about people who come from those kind of, the way you described your first relationship sounds like one of those stories of a little bit coercive, a little bit gaslighty, a little bit kind of chipping away slowly at who you were.
mm,
And I imagine it doesn't come back easily when you finally meet the right person you're supposed to be with, and can just start to trust that
mm,
when they say they love you, actually they do mean it. And when
mm,
they aren't, they are going to be loyal. They really do mean it.
mm, mm.
But how did you experience those? I'm just curious. How did you? And I know, not talking about the early days, the first flush of, being in love, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
first 6 months, but more the settling into a relationship. Was that difficult for you?
Well, I mean, it was incredibly difficult and incredibly messy, and I'm very pleased that my life has been very drama free over the last few years. But when I first met him, unfortunately, I had a stalker, and so I
Oh
had
God.
this. So my life felt very dramatic at the moment I met him. So I was still at that stage where I hadn't met Anik. I was fairly chaotic to be around
Mm,
emotionally, and in terms of my reactions, I would react, I wouldn't respond. I wasn't able to self-regulate. I was in fight, flight, freeze, fawn all the time, and he too was going through a divorce. So it
Mm.
was a very heady mix of insecurity and lack of certainty and a desperate need to feel secure and loved and seen and heard and all of those, and understood. Um,
Mm.
and so I think, and he demonstrated a lot more patience, I think, than I did in knowing and understanding that this was going to take time. But I think,
Mm.
was it difficult? I never thought it would become possible to trust somebody. And people
Yeah.
still say to me now, "Well, you can never trust somebody fully." I genuinely do trust him fully, but that came with uh, a lot at the beginning was me asking him to prove that to me, which was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
deeply unhealthy, not healthy for him,
Mm.
not a healthy approach. It's fear based. So
Of course.
moving from fear into faith, and placing faith in our relationship took time, and I think he was very, very good at maintaining complete openness and reassuring, being offering that reassurance. And was he perfect? No, of course not, because none of us are. But he was very, very good at continuously offering that reassurance without frustration. And I think in the end, I just grew to learn as I grew and learned more about myself, that here was somebody showing me consistently who they were, and consistently who they were was loyal and true and faithful, and that I could trust that.
Yeah. And I bet coming home now feels completely different, doesn't it?
Oh my,
Y-
yeah, calm and like, yeah, and my safe place. This is where I love to be
Yeah.
the most.
Mm.
It's where I want to be, and it is an amazing feeling when you haven't had that. And
Mm.
I think having that I feel deeply grateful for it, because it's not something I had, or something I felt growing up, or in my teens, or in my 20s, or my 30s, and I have it now. So I know how precious that is, and how lucky I am to have it.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing all of that because I think anyone listening here who's maybe in that first relationship will have some courage, maybe some hope
Mm,
that there's a different future if you can be find your agency and
yeah.
and find your way out of it. It's not easy. I think there's such a complex thing, and I'm looping right back to the early statement about you know how people might say, well, why did you stay with that person so long?
Mhm.
This stuff creeps in, but it also takes a long time to creep out again. So
Yes.
I'm so glad you found someone who had the patience and um, the maturity and the emotional stability to help you come back out of that.
Me
Because I
too.
think had you met someone with only half of that capability, you might have well stayed in your cynical box of I'm not lovable, it's not possible, he's not trustworthy, all these negative stories we tell ourselves to
Yeah.
protect ourselves. But actually, if you find the right person, all of that can fall away and
Mm.
home can feel like how it feels for you now. So I'm just really pleased you've found each other. And as I say, anyone listening who's questioning, you
Mm.
know, I hope you find um, your courage, listeners,
Me too.
to know that there's somebody out there for you who will make you feel at home wherever you are. And that's the thing, isn't it? If you find someone who's absolutely tuned into to your needs,
Mm.
you can. Home is everywhere. Home is at Sainsbury's doing the shopping. Home
Yeah,
is
so true.
in the car wash. Home is everywhere,
Yeah.
and I think that's such a nice feeling. So I'm really pleased you've met each other.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, very, very grateful for that.
Wonderful. All right. Well, what a great set of five. Um, yeah, Miss Daddy. We've done the Johnsons, all of them.
Yeah.
Um, Anique, who I'm
Yeah.
really would love to look into more. Chloe, who sounds extraordinary, and would like to meet her too, please. That would be great. And David, and I think I can see that these people have given you, I guess, the toolkit. Can I say that the
Mm.
toolkit or the the necessary things to make you who you are, for you to go and do your good work. So they're kind of,
The
in the very
scaffolding.
positive
I think
sense.
they've given me
Well,
the scaffolding to
yeah,
climb.
well, I was going to say in the very best of ways, they're the enablers. They're
Mm,
enablers of you to be the person you need to be to give what you give out into the world. But as I say, I love to ask my guests this next question, which is, that's what I see from just hearing you. What do you see specifically from these people? I mean, we've talked about some of the gifts they've given you, but do
yeah.
you, now we've talked about them, do you think, ah, yes, I get that from, and can explicitly see it?
Yeah, I'm feeling they feel like they've all helped me on this kind of, I hate the word journey, it's so overused, but I can't think of a
Yeah.
better one. But on a bridge back to myself, and
Yeah.
and that ability to connect with who I am, what I need, what I stand for, what matters most, and
Mm.
making decisions from that place. Each and every single one of those people have helped me to move towards that ability to, I think, make choices and move into new spaces from a place of deep self-trust. And a bit like you said, Julie,
Mm.
you have to walk into rooms and know you are more than enough, and that
Yeah.
you are going to be okay no matter who's in the room, no matter what the conversation. And I used to feel like I could do that because I felt I had a mask for that. I would be very
Mm.
confident, maybe
Yeah.
maybe crack a few jokes, but now I can move into those spaces because all of these people have helped me to reconnect with who I really am. And I think when you can do that, anything is possible. Self trust, self esteem, it's an act, isn't it? It's not something you have or don't have. And all of these people have helped me to take courageous steps towards building esteem and
Yeah.
trust.
And you know what? People know the difference. I honestly, people really do know the difference, I think, at some kind of energetic level when someone's masking versus when someone walks in with true, um, I imagine you still use humor, but it
Yeah,
comes from a place of, because it comes from a place of supreme comfort
yeah.
and play. You just want to play. I know I walk into a room and have a certain impact because people tell me. And
Mm,
it's not an impact of being imposing or trying to be a certain way. I'm not even thinking about it. And I think
mm,
the fact that I'm not thinking about it is where I get my energetic kind of presence from.
mm.
And I use humor all the time because I like playing, not
Yeah.
because I'm trying to be funny. Oh, look at me, I'm so funny. It's like, oh, this is great. Who are these people? I don't know them. Let's have some fun with this,
Mm.
And I use humor because it just is playful, and
It's
play
very
is fun
connecting
and
as well,
important.
isn't it? And
Great for
love
connecting.
thing. And
Laughter's the best of everything.
exactly, life is so serious. We need
Yeah,
more levity, we need more joy, we need more fun. All of us need
yeah.
more of that.
And I think when people show up as their full selves, um, I think it's very comforting for everybody else in the room. I think if you can bring that energy, it just relaxes everybody because they go, oh, Lucy's here, it'll be all right, and you set that tone. So I'm glad that you have had those influences, and you now feel that you can just show up as your true self. Because let's face it, all those masks are so exhausting anyway,
They really are.
and to maintain them, it's mind bending.
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased that you've recognised it in yourself, and you've had all those gifts of all that lovely investment. Okay, so my next question is always the same again, which is um, kind of how are you taking all of this great investment in you forward? It's very obvious in your work what you're
Mm.
doing. It's very obvious your purpose, as I said right at the beginning, and I wonder from your side, is there something beyond that as well? I mean, that's huge anyway, but is there something beyond that, a kind of a life purpose, a way to be what you want to be known for, what you want people to say about you? I don't know, something beyond the things that you do, but more about who you are and what your kind of influence on the world is. Is there an ambition from you on that?
That's interesting. So yeah, and it is hard, isn't it? Because we become, uh, especially when you are, you've got a demanding job and other stuff going on in your life. You become almost like a human doing rather than a human
Mm,
being. And I think this question for me, and listening to other episodes, is is a tough one because so much of my identity is still wrapped up in the work I do. And
mm,
I think I think what I think when I was thinking about how do I show up in the world, and there's like an old paradigm and a new paradigm, isn't there? And I think I really want to bring more peace to people around me,
mm,
and I am someone, because I'm so busy a lot of the time, and that self-directed busyness is, if I can continue to work on this capability to find peace, to find stillness, to find presence, that impact on those around me and in my team and in my work, I know that for me that's the next level, is to find
mm.
that that centeredness, and that is definitely something I want to bring into all aspects of who I am and how I show up in the world. 100%.
Do you know, that's interesting. I was interviewed recently, excuse me, and one of the last questions he asked was, what's sort of next for you? And I said something similar. I said, I feel like I've really like caned it this first half.
Mm.
And I'm a bit older than you. I'm sort of what am I? 54. I'm 54. And you know, you start to think a little bit about what's next for you.
Of
And he
course.
asked me the same question, and he said, "What do you want?" I said, I'd like peace, please. I feel
Mm.
like that's the
Mm.
thing. That's the ultimate, isn't it?
Yeah,
Peace for yourself and peace for the people that you can influence. And
100%.
it's such a, when you say it, it just makes you go, oh yes,
Doesn't it?
that
So,
is
ugh.
this what I want? Yeah,
Yeah,
just peace.
yeah.
And you know, as an ambition for yourself and for others, you know, I totally chime with that. That's something I'm looking for. Um, and and lately, yes, feeling like I feel like I'm already starting to experience it. It's
Mm.
a it's a comfort feeling. It's like you know, we you can't get away from what's happening outside your door. You can see, you know, I'm not trying to say that you know, there's not all kinds of terrible things happening in the world, but how you move through it, if you can get to a place of peace and acceptance, I think it brings the best out of, you know, it'll bring the best out of, you know, ourselves. Um, if you are tense and angry and you can't, it just takes the shine off you, doesn't it? And I think people, when I hear you speak and I look at the work you do, people really would like you, need you to keep shining, I think, because that's your gift to everybody else. It's like, and if you can't find that inner peace to do it,
Mm.
you're not going to show up in a shiny way. And I
Yeah,
don't mean a masked shiny way. I mean a genuine shiny way
yeah.
that people will just love to be around. So here's to peace, peace
Here's
for
to
all,
you.
for both of us and
Yes.
everyone that we can influence. Wonderful. Okay, well, listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I wasn't sure which direction it was going to go. I love the idea of chapters. Well done, you. I think that's a great way of approaching this. And the people that you've shared with us today have been really, really extraordinary and thought provoking. And I'm just so happy for you that you've got these great people in your life and you've learned so much about yourself through all of this. So thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I know you're extraordinarily busy. So please, you know, keep doing what you're doing, Lucy. I think it's great, you know, from a business point of view and also from a personal point of view. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful having this conversation.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you, Lucy. Take care. Bye bye. Well, that was Lucy. And, you know, I was really not quite sure which direction we were going to go in. And I'm so pleased that she took that format. That format of chapters works so well. And I got to know her very well through that using that format, and I hope you did too. And if you did enjoy this conversation, please like, rate, review, and share. And join me next time when I introduce you to my next guest. Until then, take care for now. Bye bye.